Hello and welcome. My name is Cara Mason and I've been helping women to completely overcome vaginismus for over 25 years now. This video is all about helping you to understand the two really important steps that you need to take in order to achieve comfortable and relaxed penetration. So it doesn't matter whether your issue is anxiety around penetration or whether you feel pain, or it might be a combination of the two. This video is going to help you to understand why. So it might be that you are somebody who feels too anxious to try and insert anything, or it might be that you've only gotten so far with doing pelvic floor exercises or using dilators but you're unable to progress. This will explain why. Now, every single woman who has been able to overcome vaginismus was able to do so for exactly the same reason. She felt relaxed and comfortable enough in order for her body to relax. And when that happens, it's not because of a fluke and it's not just down to luck, but there's very predictable and specific things that a woman needs to do in order to enable comfortable penetration. And in this video, you're going to learn exactly what those things are so that you can do them too. Now, the aim of this video is to explain why you've struggled with purely physical treatments for vaginismus in the past, so purely physical ones being pelvic floor exercises, dilators, why you might have avoided trying to resolve vaginismus, and that includes even just thinking about it because the thought has felt so overwhelming. Why you might think that vaginismus is hard to resolve when actually it's not. And that successful penetration is entirely achievable with the two steps that you're about to see. And just in case you're wondering if you're in the right place for this video, you're very likely to fall into one of these following categories. So you're somebody who feels too anxious or too uncomfortable to try insertion. You might be frustrated and just feel that you can't progress. So it might be you've gotten to a certain dilator size and you can't move on. It might be that you feel disillusioned from trying other treatments that just haven't worked and you're left with the belief of, wow, this must be really hard to resolve. And it might be that you have done fine with dilators, but you're unable to transition to sex. So maybe you're just, hitting that pesky wall. So really important. I do ask, please don't start a vaginismus treatment until you've watched this video, because this will really help to guide you to make the right informed decision about what you need to properly help resolve your vaginismus. So here we go, the two steps to successful penetration. Now, I'm going to do this out of order. So starting in reverse order, and I'm doing this for a reason. Step number 2 is taking the right physical action. So what that entails is you need to have an object for insertion. So in this case, it might be a dilator, it might be a tampon, it might be your partner's penis. And you also need the correct insertion technique. So as you can see, I've slightly tilted that picture of a dilator on its side. So it's things like just knowing what angle to insert the dilator in or how long to leave it in for. Now, this is where so many women that I speak to feel completely stuck at, because what they're trying to do is trying to implement the right physical action, but all they're finding is they're hitting that wall, or even when they do try to insert that object, it's painful. And the reason that that is happening is because of this. They're missing the most crucial step. And step number 1 is what I've called your mental foundations. So these are the psychological foundations that you really need to have in place before you even try to be proactive with that object. So I'm going to show you what they are, and then a bit later I'm going to go into a little bit more in detail so you really understand what's involved. They're not complicated, but you really do want to have that knowledge in order to fill in any gaps in your understanding. So the first one is just having knowledge about your body, about penetration and what's required. Second one is having a helpful mindset, and that's not just saying, oh, you just need to think positively or you just need to relax. It's a little bit more to it than that. Number three is just having a good connection with your body. If you're like so many women with vaginismus, it's so easy to feel alienated and disconnected from your body. And step number four is just feeling at ease with your partner in the bedroom, because if you feel quite nervous, if you're worrying about what he's thinking, all of these things can cause you to tense up and contribute to vaginismus. So it's so important to have the combination of these two steps in order to properly overcome vaginismus. And just to show you why, if you have the correct mental foundations, team that with the correct physical action, you're pretty much guaranteed success. It's that predictable. However, if you don't have that awareness or that understanding about your mindset, if you don't have those foundations in place, but yet you're trying to insert that dilator, it's completely understandable as to why you might struggle, and you might, hit that wall, you might feel that anxiety, or you might feel that pain from physically tensing up. So I'm just going to give you some examples from other areas of your life that explain why having good mental foundations are so important. And it's also really important for me to say at this point that you don't just build mental foundations overnight, but it's not something that necessarily takes a long time to learn. It's entirely achievable to build good, strong mental foundations in just a few weeks. So the first example from real life that I'm going to give you is, if you imagine, sorry, I'm sort of lost with this woman here, but if you imagine somebody who is learning to drive. Okay, so as you can see, this woman is looking quite stressed, quite anxious, understandably, because you wouldn't want to start learning to drive out on the motorway. You wouldn't want to just leap in there with physical action without having preparation first. So what we have in this picture here is a very happy, if not smug, looking woman who is learning to drive. So you start off slowly and sensibly by learning how the car works. So you put into practice that knowledge, that understanding, and then by the time you get out on the busier roads, you're going to feel much more confident. Another example is if you are learning to swim, and sorry about my very dramatic picture, that's what that was the best I could get from Canva. But if you're learning to swim, you wouldn't want to start off at the deep end. That would be crazy. You're just going to be setting yourself up for a lot of anxiety. Instead, what's much more sensible is you would build your mental foundations, you would build your confidence, build your understanding in the shallow end. So relating this back to vaginismus, what you've got in this picture here is this poor girl's looking very disappointed at some cookies that she's tried to bake, but she hasn't switched the oven on. So trying to insert something into an unwilling vagina is like trying to bake in a cold oven. It's not going to happen. You're just going to be disappointed. And this is why the foundations are so important. So here's a list of the foundations that we're going to have a look through now. And what I've done is I've enlisted the help of a number of quotes from women who have been through my program and resolved their vaginismus. And I assure you, these were all women like you, probably women who felt very anxious that they could ever overcome vaginismus, but they acquired the skills, they acquired these foundations. So we're going to look at each point in turn. So the first one is, in order to properly overcome vaginismus, you want to have the right knowledge. And by understanding your body's responses, you empower yourself with the insight and confidence to overcome vaginismus, because knowledge really is power when it comes to overcoming vaginismus. Without having that knowledge, you may feel that vaginismus is just something that is happening to you, that you've got no control over. It's this unconscious response that you cannot change. You might believe that vaginismus is hard to resolve. It's not, with the right help. You might believe that you've got a medical condition and you're in some way broken. Oh, sorry, I got my big head in the way, but you might believe that vaginismus is caused by your past or things that have been and gone years and years ago that you now cannot change. So none of these things are true. And what you're going to see now is a few quotes from women who probably felt exactly the same way that you do now, but these women gained accurate knowledge that they used to overcome vaginismus. And I hope these quotes are really going to inspire you. So the first one comes from a lovely lady called Sunita, who said, "I thought I had a medical condition which actually turned out to be a state of mind. Within 7 weeks, I had sex for the first time. Each time I embraced my achievements rather than focus on the negative, and now I'm able to have sex enjoyably." And it is so common for women with vaginismus to focus upon their negatives and completely ignore any positive experiences that they might have. And that's not just in the bedroom, but actually outside of it too. Here we've got a quote from Megan, who said, "I've been wrongly blaming vaginismus on events from my past for years due to experts telling me that's why I had the condition. Who would have thought that just by changing my negative mindset, I could achieve things that would have previously filled me with dread? The human mind is such a powerful tool, and now I can use it to the best of my ability." And Megan isn't unique. Learning to overcome vaginismus just requires a skill set and a knowledge that anybody can learn. And then finally, on the subject of knowledge, we've got Sarah, who said, "I realised that all the experts I saw were either gynecologists or counsellors. And the problem with both is that they did not understand how the mind and body are linked." And you absolutely have to when it comes to properly resolving vaginismus. So the next one we're going to have a look at, the next of your foundations, is having a helpful mindset. So when you have one of these, it helps you to think more calmly and clearly when you're doing your penetration exercises, which allows you to make steady progress and cope better with any obstacles, because the process of overcoming vaginismus is rarely linear. Every day, every experience, you just keep getting better and better. Actually, progress can feel a little bit like that, but the more helpful your mindset is, the more you're able to deal with any setbacks and bounce back from them. So, a helpful mindset. So without it, you may dread or avoid penetration, which is the case for most women with vaginismus, worry excessively about it, catastrophize or imagine the worst. So even when you're thinking ahead to, "Oh God, I've got to try my dilators," you're certainly not imagining the best case scenario. And you're also very likely to focus more on setbacks than any successes, and that's going to stop any progress in its tracks. So, words from women who developed a helpful mindset. Here we've got Chloe, who said, "At times, vaginismus seemed like the hugest mountain. But over time, this mountain was chipped away. When I finally overcame vaginismus, I was blown away by how simple and easy it really was. The battle was all in my mind." So no woman ever overcomes vaginismus overnight, but it is a case of having lots of little experiences where you're building your knowledge, you're building your beliefs. This quote comes from Anita, who said, "I was able to work my way up confidently, managing to use the dilators. Before this, I was completely scared of inserting anything." If that's the case for you, really don't worry, you're not alone. "I realised how I was creating anxiety and learned to calm myself down and have more control over my mind. After a year and a half of marriage, I had sex for the first time." Now, the third factor in your mental foundations is just having a good connection with your body. So understanding how your body responds helps you to feel more powerful and more in control of your body, because that's what overcoming vaginismus is all about. So without having a good connection with your body, you may feel alienated from your body, feel as if you have no control over its responses, feel uncomfortable or nervous about insertion, or feel icky about even looking at or touching your genital area. And next, you're going to hear some words from women who went from feeling disconnected to connected to their bodies. Now, the quote that you're about to see comes from Lydia, And just to explain, Lydia, prior to doing my program, was somebody who had done really well with all of her dilators. She was able to even insert the biggest dilator, but when it came to trying to have sex with her husband, he was just hitting that wall, and it just felt like she was back to square one. So what she did, and what all of my ladies do on my program, is she did the mirror exercise, which is basically just getting a mirror and having a look at her genitals, getting used to what she sees, getting acquainted with her body. And this is what Lydia had to say. I had no idea I'd have so much anxiety surrounding it. The first day, the anxiety was through the roof. I was literally taking deep breaths before starting. For some reason, I was so scared of what I might see. I did it anyway, and day, after just a few short minutes at a time, the confidence and calmness grew and grew. Today, there's no squeamishness or dread doing it. This is a huge stepping stone for me. And just while we're on the subject of Lydia, Lydia is now pregnant with her first child, something she never in a million years thought she could ever do. Now, on the subject of connecting with your body, I just want to show you what is possible within a few short weeks. So when women start my program, they take a very comprehensive quiz that measures their beliefs about how connected they are to their body. So what you have on the left-hand side is a few of those beliefs there. So things like, I can comfortably insert a cotton bud into my vagina. So at the start of the program, 40% of women believe that they could, meaning obviously 60% believe that they couldn't. But then just 6 to 7 weeks later, that went up to a massive 96%. The next one is, I can comfortably insert a finger into my vagina, something that so many women really don't want to do, but it's a great way of connecting with your body. 32% of women believed that they could do that at the start of the program, rising up to 96% by the end. I can, or I could comfortably use a tampon. That went up from 20% to 96%. And then I can, or I could comfortably have penetrative sex. So obviously nobody did at the start of the program, hence why they're doing the program. But by 6 or 7 weeks later, which isn't even the end of the program, a massive 88% of women believe that they could. In terms of beliefs, so at the start of the program, I feel quite alienated from my body and how it responds. 96% of women believe that, dropping down to 0 6 to 7 weeks later. I have little no control over my body's response to penetration. Everybody believed that at the start of the program. Nobody did a few weeks on. So this is just hopefully really good, encouraging evidence to show you how much you can change within just a few short weeks. Now, the final factor we're going to have a look at is how much ease you feel with your partner. And here I'm specifically talking about in the bedroom, because it might be in all other areas of your relationship you feel completely fine and completely relaxed with him, but in the bedroom that might not be the case. And if you are a single woman, if you don't yet have a partner, this is still going to be relevant for you, because it might be that actually you've held off getting into a relationship because you anticipate not feeling at ease. So having the confidence to express your needs helps you to relax and share closeness and connection with your partner. And without it, you may feel unable to speak your mind, to say what you want him to do, what you don't want him to do. You might feel tense or under pressure during intimacy, and that pressure that you feel may not come at all from him. It may be entirely self-imposed and the pressures you put yourself under. You might feel less connected emotionally and physically to him. And you might also feel inadequate, feel guilty, or feel embarrassed. And all of these emotions are just going to contribute to you feeling more tense in the bedroom. But here we have some inspiring words from women who built their confidence with their partner. And building that confidence is a matter of building your self-esteem, building your social confidence, building how powerful and how in control you feel in the bedroom. And these aren't skills that we're born with. These are all skills that any woman can learn. So the first quote we have is from Megan, who said, "Vaginismus prevented me from pursuing relationships or putting up with behaviour I shouldn't have, as I didn't think I could do better. I never thought I would say this, but after 7 years, I believe I'm free from vaginismus. Not only that, but my social anxiety has greatly reduced and my self-esteem is at an all-time high. It turns out all three were linked. And the next quote comes from Katie, who said, I constantly felt ashamed of myself, unattractive and generally unworthy of my partner, backing down in arguments that weren't even my fault as I felt not good enough. I learned how to manage and eliminate fear. I have an entirely normal sex life, no self-esteem issues, and my relationship is as strong as it can be. To think I was ever so anxious about this is actually almost comical. It's all completely in your hands, and I promise that you can do this. Okay, so I really hope that that is encouraging for you to hear. So just as a little reminder then, in order to achieve successful penetration, it's entirely about having these two steps. So having the mental foundations and applying the correct physical action. When you have those two things working together, it's predictable that you are going to resolve vaginismus. And I also hope that this explains why, if you're frustrated with purely physical techniques, that it's not you that is doing anything wrong. It's just nobody's taught you how to have the correct mental foundations to get the most out of your physical action. So we're nearly at the end now, and I've just got a couple more really important ideas to share with you. So on this slide, this shows you what most people, most women with vaginismus, think that they should focus their efforts and their attention on in their attempts to overcome it. And I think that most people believe that as much as 90% of their efforts should be on the physical action side, which is why they can be poking away with those dilators for months or even years. And only the remaining 10%, just that small component, is devoted to their mental foundations, which might be just giving a nod to, well, I'm going to try and think positively, or, I'm going to try and calm myself down. And that explains what makes it so hard to overcome vaginismus, because the reality is that the correct focus for successful penetration, the ratio looks more like this. So as much as 90% of your efforts and your focus should be on building your mental foundations, working on your beliefs, working on your knowledge and your mindset. And only the remaining 10% is required for that physical action to go well. Because the reality is, it's when your mind is in the right place, even if that dilator isn't being inserted at quite the right angle, it's fine. You're going to have the mental capacity, the knowledge to be able to adjust that, calm yourself down, and then get back to the task in hand. So let's have a little look at what we've learned today. So you've learned why you may have struggled with purely physical treatments, why you've avoided penetration or trying to resolve vaginismus, and it's not because you're lazy and it's not because you don't want to, but when you don't know how to, it can seem like an insurmountable task. And that successful penetration is achievable with the right approach. Now, if you're somebody who would really like to overcome vaginismus, even if you worry that you might not be able to find out more, just go to my website, which is vaginismus-treatment.co.uk/options, and that particular page will give you the chance to book a free 30-minute online consultation with me, where we can have a good old chat about you, about your experiences, and about how my program can help you. Or if you don't need a consultation, that's absolutely fine, but you can get in touch and just get some more details from me. So thank you so much for sticking with me. I know it's a lot of information, but I really do hope that you found it helpful. Thanks very much.